Cinemajaw is brought to you by Cards Against Humanity. Guess what?
What, Matt?
They asked us not to read an ad.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious.
That is so cool.
Dead serious.
Wow.
Enjoy the show. Listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location at Cards Against Humanity in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is
Rye, the movie guy, and sitting alongside us this week in the fish tank over there is Filmy and Phil.
Hey, Jawheads, how's it going?
This week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we go underground, deep underground, as we cover our top 5 favorite movies that take place underground.
I brought my crampons, Rye.
What the hell is that?
And some spelunking gear.
Spelunking gear. I like it.
Yep, some ropes, helmets, lamps, etc.
We were just talking right before we hit the record button here, and we said, what an interesting topic this was. I had a fun time coming up with films that take place underground.
I did too. And it's cool because this isn't one where you Google it and there's like 800 top lists out there already. This is kind of fresh territory.
Yeah, so Jawheads, get thinking about films that take place underground. We're doing this, Matt, because we have a special guest who's going to be joining us.
Oh, yes. Bryan Wendorf is with us, who is the co-founder, programmer, and artistic director of the Chicago Underground Film Festival.
See how we tied it in, Matt?
See what we did there?
Yeah, pretty excited to talk to Bryan.
Definitely, yes.
Besides that, we have a whole lot more going on, don't we, Phil?
Yes, we are also going eye for an eye on Thor Ragnarok.
And we have a review of Suburbicon.
Nice. Plus, Matt, huge news. We interviewed, how big is this?
I'm excited.
We interviewed John Carpenter. I should say Matt interviewed John Carpenter.
It's a Halloween treat just for the Jawheads. You thought you had enough candy, here's a little bit more.
Yes. So
no razor blades, I promise.
In lieu of CinemaWAR, we are going to play Matt's conversation with the great John Carpenter.
Yes, and don't worry, Jawheads, the Cinema Wars will be back. We thought, you know what, this one, you take John Carpenter instead, and you're going to be happy with that.
I think it's a little bit cooler every once in a while to say, hey, I'm hearing an interview with John Carpenter, than to hear me and you, two ass bags, going back and forth about a movie topic.
Well, as fun as that is, in this particular case, I happen to agree with you.
Also, as Phil mentioned, we were going eye for an eye on the new Thor movie. Mm-hmm. So I thought this is a good time for Bryan to take on Matt in Thor cast movie trivia.
Oh, well, okay. They've had a great cast. Yeah.
Large cast.
3 films so far.
In the new Thor. Before we bring in Bryan, some Jaw happenings. As we mentioned, you got to talk to John Carpenter. Pretty neat.
Yeah.
And also, we had Cinemajaw had our first sort of after party after the industry days at the Chicago International Film Festival. I want to give a big shout out to some of the Jawheads that came out there. Mike McNamara, Mac from Chicago Independent Film Festival came out. Brad Wysocki, he's a Patreon here on Cinemajaw, came out wearing a Cinemajaw shirt. It was awesome.
Was he wearing his Patreon shirt? Just curious.
No, it wasn't the Patreon shirt, but it was the
he's a real fan.
It was the Cinemajaw logo that Elias has designed.
Cool.
It was awesome. We had other critics out there. We had fans coming. We had people who were at industry days come out. So big shout out to everybody who came and enjoyed and made it a successful Cinemajaw after party.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as we're saying thanks, right at the top, I want to say big thanks to Riot Fest, who helped us actually completely arranged the John Carpenter interview. And if you want to check out my full article, I will link to it in the show notes.
Nice. And one other thank you is to the Chicago International Film Fest, who also had sort of like a press party with their awards ceremony. And me and Elias were able to go out there, sort of mingle, if you will, with other critics. And
it's that season,
such.
right?
It is.
Lots
of
stuff
great.
is happening.
And when it's open bar, it's my kind of season.
Yeah.
So free drinks, and it was awesome. We ran into actually some past Cinemajaw guests like Fazia.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just great running into people that we've had on the show. You feel like you're really part of the community. And that's what it's all about.
That's great.
We're helping the community, at least.
I agree.
Speaking of helping in the community, you see that?
It's a good segue, Ryan. Well done.
Every once in a while. Our guest, as Matt mentioned, co-founded the Chicago Underground Film Festival. The great Roger Ebert had this to say about the Chicago Underground Film Festival. When asked about it, he said, "What you get for your money is not just admission to the films, but admission to a subculture. I think that really sums up what the Chicago Underground Film Festival is pulling off here. It is a pleasure to welcome Bryan Wendorf to Cinemajaw.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It amazes me, Matt, and Bryan, that we've been doing this now for so long, and yet there are still people like Bryan who have been doing something so unique in Chicago that we haven't had on the podcast. And I think it's a tribute to the city and how much we have going on. But
This is a great film town.
I wanted to get somebody from Chicago Underground Film Festival on Cinemajaw for probably the past 5 years, and now, well, damn it, we got the guy who started it all.
Well, co-founder.
Co-founder.
So I didn't start it all, but
Well,
I was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's start there. I mean, take us back to that time.
Okay, so 1994, I was working at Video Adventure, which was at a great cinephile video store in Evanston, Illinois. I started working there because my friend Jay Bliznick was hired there before me. Jay and I both became assistant managers there. This is a kind of video store. I mean, there aren't video stores today, but part of the job interview, you received a printout of every video in the store's collection and a highlighter. And you were told to go through and highlight every film you had seen.
So your stack was just yellow.
So if you hadn't, they wouldn't even consider you if they didn't see like 75% yellow.
Wow.
Did they test you? I mean, because you could just lie. And
Well, then they would, in the interview, they would ask you about specific films. Like, what did you think
Try to
of
catch you out.
this? And, why do you like, did you like this film? Didn't you like, why? What? And so everybody that worked there knew film really well.
Okay.
We all knew different things. Jay was the guy who actually deserves the credit for starting the Chicago Underground Film Festival, having the idea, having the name. Jay had been selling videotapes at horror film conventions and things.
Okay.
And he had gone to a famous Monsters of Filmland convention. I think it was somewhere in Virginia.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that's a big one, too.
Yeah. And while he was there, he had lunch with somebody, and during this lunch, he had this idea for this festival. He came back to Chicago, called me up, and he said, "Bryan, I want to start the Chicago Underground Film Festival, and I want you to help." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not interested." It took him a couple of months of prodding me to get me on board, partially because when I finally said yes, I kind of knew 25 years later I might still be here doing this thing. Once I was on board, I was fully on board. But it took him a couple of months.
What pushed you over the edge?
I needed to just know that he was serious and have an idea of what his idea, what this was going to be.
Sure.
I mean, at that time, neither Jay or I had really even attended film festivals, let alone started one of our own.
Before Film Freeway, before really the internet.
At that time, neither Jay or I had our own computers at that time. But one of our coworkers had an internet and an email address. He became part of the festival staff because his job was he would receive festival-related emails, print them out, bring them to the video store, give us the printout. We would read the email, give our response, and then he would go back
and type
it in and
goodness.
respond for us. So the very first year, the festival was a 3-day weekend. Because Jay's model in the early years of this was from doing these horror film conventions and things, the first couple of years of the festival had a little bit more of that kind of a feel to it than what you think of as a film festival today, what like the Chicago International or what we do now. And we had no money. So we had gone to the Bismarck Hotel, which is now the Allegra Hotel. It's around the corner from the Gene Siskel Film Center.
Right over there on State Street over there.
Yeah. And they gave us a ballroom and a conference room for free under the idea that we would get enough people staying at their hotel to come into town. So part of the acceptance call, we actually called all the
Was
accepted
selling
was
rooms.
getting people to like, oh, you know, if you're coming to the festival,
Please stay here.
Yeah, please stay here.
Nice.
And it worked. So we did that for 2 years, and then we moved into a theater space that did live theater and brought in our own film. The first few years, we only showed 16 millimeter prints and video. And video at that time was not digital video like you have today. It was
Tape.
3/4 inch analog videotape, like broadcast tapes that
Yeah.
people would mail.
Reel
us
to
that were
reel.
Like, they were like, not reel to reel, but like they were like a foot wide, you know. And we had one theater that only showed video and one theater that only showed film.
Wow.
So we didn't mix medium in a program. Are you guys familiar with Film Threat magazine?
Yes.
I know it, yeah.
All right, so Film Threat was a big inspiration for us when we started. Jay is from the Detroit area. He grew up there. Chris Gore, who started Film Threat, was a video clerk at the store that Jay went to in Royal Oak, Michigan.
Right outside Detroit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris was the person that kind of exposed Jay to underground films, John Waters, cult movies.
And let me
things.
pause you there because there's probably listeners that, I mean, we're saying the Chicago Underground Film Festival, but we should give them an idea of what kind of films we're discussing here. What would be the sales pitch of the Chicago Underground Film Festival?
Well, we deliberately try to keep our definition of underground as broad as we can, and it ranges. The phrase underground film first became used in like the late 50s, early 60s, and it was a kind of a catch-all phrase for films that, I mean, had been experimental films before that, but the underground were films that had a connotation that were kind of connected to like the bohemian counterculture at the time, like the beat films
Sure.
or like the 60s counterculture, which we'll get to this when we get into our top 5 lists. One of my lists, I actually grouped a bunch of underground films of that sort as one of my things that kind of the things that inspired us when we started. But it's a description for a kind of film that's gone in and out of fashion over time.
Yeah.
You know, like it was popular in the early 60s. By the 70s, it had kind of gone away and wasn't being used as a phrase anymore. They were like kind of came back in the 80s. We started our festival in the early 90s, and we were influenced by all these things. Like I said, Film Threat was a film zine. I'm not sure if your listeners, before podcasts, people read zines.
There's still some zines kicking around in
yeah.
this office,
I mean,
as a matter of fact.
I used to work at Quimby's bookstore, too.
Oh, nice.
And so zines were very, very important to us. And Jay and I both had kind of a punk rock background. We were into, music and underground culture in general. Like, we were just the kind of guys that gravitated towards those kind of things that were on the fringe that you had to seek out, and our tastes in music we were never like, oh, that new band on the radio is really, I mean, we might like some of that stuff, but we were like, no, but have you heard this,
You weren't into Hanson?
No.
No, okay.
No. Oh, Bop, it's not so bad.
Sure.
I like some catchy pop music too, but and I like some mainstream films too. I'm not, exclusive about.
But I would imagine that at the time, some of these experimental directors that were making films, they don't have the outlet at that time. You go back 25 years ago, they don't have the ability to put it out on a Vimeo.
There's no YouTube,
Right. So they had to be super excited to be able to contact somebody like yourself that would screen something that was different and not mainstream.
Yeah. So Film Threat started this sister publication called the Film Threat Video Guide, which is kind of a ploy to sell their own line of videotapes that they had started putting out. But it was really, actually, at a certain point, I was more interested in what was being written about in the Film Threat Video Guide than in the regular Film Threat magazine. And what this video guide did was, if you sent them a tape of your movie, a VHS tape, they would review it. And so when we started the festival, we were looking at this magazine and reading all these reviews of movies just being made, it's like
It's almost a dare.
student films, people who just, make like good, bad, everything in between, and reading about the ones that sounded really cool and really interesting. And that was part of the inspiration for starting it too, reading about those films in the Film Threat Video Guide and thinking like, well, even working at this video store, I don't have the money to like buy all these tapes. But if we do this festival, like we can see everything, and they'll sell more tapes because people will come and see stuff and they'll be like, oh, I want to own it.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, everybody wins. So Chris,
I love that we're talking about tapes,
Yeah. Chris, and this was those early years, all the submissions we received, people were mailing VHS tapes to us.
Crazy.
I would leave the post office with a bag of VHS tapes as tall as I am. I'm 6'2", just for your listeners who can't picture this.
Sure, yeah, that's a lot of VHS.
It's a lot of VHS tapes, and my apartment was just piles and piles. I mean, this is, today we have Vimeo, and and there's almost nothing mailed.
It's interesting. I used to do a film. Let's just call it a film night. We called it a film festival, but it's not fair to real festivals at a bar. Okay, we did it for 10 years. It was okay, but we insisted on getting the
hard copy.
Hard copy. It was DVDs at the time, and just to see how far the DVDs piled up. And these were jewel cases, not the thick DVD cases. Right. But still, I had bankers boxes full of them. I mean, over 10 years, maybe close to 1,000.
Yeah, and now I just mentioned how I ran into Mike McNamara, and I was talking to him, and I used to actually help his festival with submissions. And I was, asking how the fest is going. He's like, it's so funny because we don't even accept films that have hard copy anymore. If you can't send it digital to him, that's the cutoff.
Yeah.
He just doesn't even want it.
Yeah,
I'm
the same way now. I don't want somebody mailing, like, I don't want to store all those DVDs,
right?
Yeah.
Or throw them away because
then you got to recycle them.
Yeah.
Now
Vimeo has really been a blessing. Think about this for a moment. Before Chicago Underground, when the Chicago International Film Festival started, or when Cannes started, there was no VHS tape.
Wow.
Every film submitted to the festival had to send a physical film print to the festival for the programmers to watch in a theater.
That's crazy.
And then they had to decide if they were going to accept it or not. And if they didn't accept it, then they had to ship it back.
Insane.
I mean, I read a book years ago called Party in a Box that was about the history of the Sundance Film Festival. And they talked about, in this book, they talk about calling up this obscure, they've heard of this guy, David Lynch, who's made this film, Eraserhead.
Yeah.
And the Sundance Film Festival calls up David Lynch and says, all right, we've heard that you made a movie completely outside of Hollywood. We'd like to look at it for our festival. Can you send the print to us and we can review it? And Sundance watched Eraserhead and said, no, thank you.
Wow.
Crazy.
Insane.
Yeah. Now, years ago, I live over in the Wicker Park area, and you guys, I believe, I don't know if it was only 1 year, you guys were at the Chopin Theater?
It was just 1 year at the Chopin,
it was 1 year.
but that was fun.
Where is it now located?
We're at the Logan Theater in Logan Square, and we've been in the Logan Theater now for 4 or 5 years. I'd have to. Our first year
to feel like home.
It'll be 5 years.
That's
our
a great
20th year was our
great
first
theater.
year at the. Yeah, it's been home.
Yeah.
And the one struggling obstacle we've had for a long time with this festival was finding a really good venue.
Sure.
And the Logan's, both in terms of the size of the theater, the staff to work with, the neighborhood. I liked being at the Chopin because I liked being in Wicker Park. Like in the early 90s when we started this festival, Wicker Park was clearly the neighborhood that our audience lived in or went to. Maybe
not so much.
Maybe not so much now. Maybe
I still live there.
Exactly my point.
Oh, come on.
But there was no movie theater in Wicker Park.
Yeah.
And, we managed, we did something I knew we were onto something the first year. I was at a show at the Empty Bottle. Maybe it was Lounge Axe. Remember Lounge Axe? No. On Lincoln Avenue.
Empty Bottle, yes, but
all right. Lounge Axe was the rock club before the Empty Bottle.
Okay.
But I was at a show, and we had printed our first year Chicago Underground Film Festival T-shirts. It's like maybe a month before the festival took place. And I was wearing mine. You know, I was excited. I got my T-shirt, and I'm at this show seeing the band. And I hear somebody behind me say, "Hey, that guy's wearing a Chicago Underground Film Festival T-shirt." And I knew that we were doing something that was going to be successful because the festival hadn't taken place yet, and he knew what this was. And it didn't say, like, the picture on the back was the poster art, but it didn't have the words Chicago Underground. He just knew. He had seen enough
You tapped
ads,
into the zeitgeist.
you know,
Sure.
and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
that was cool.
Well, I think it's important too when you start a festival to have a very great what is the word I'm looking for? Acronym when you go CUF.
Oh, yeah.
Is that acronym?
It is
Yeah,
acronym.
that's an
Yeah,
acronym.
I wanted to make sure I hit it right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these festivals, they don't sound as cool as CUF. Now,
Yeah.
I'm around town. Obviously, we do this podcast. And
SIF.
Yeah, or you hear TIFF for
Yeah.
Toronto International Film Festival. And
Yeah.
when CUF comes up, you'll hear it somewhere like, oh, have you covered CUF? And it just has a good, cool
Yeah, it's
vibe
true.
to it.
It's true.
Yeah.
There have been times in my life where I've wanted to like actually say Chicago Underground Film Festival out every time somebody said CUF because I just wanted to make sure people knew what that
it
meant.
was.
Yeah.
But it's cool that people know it, you know, and people do just refer to it as CUF.
I think it was last year the Love Witch played there.
Yeah.
And it was like right on the cusp of making my top 10 of the year, how much I loved this movie, The Love Witch.
Yeah.
And that played at the Chicago Underground Film Festival. And
Yeah.
I would
I've
encourage...
shown that was the third of Anna Biller's films that I've shown
Really?
at the festival.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you're listening to this, you're in the Midwest, you're in Chicago, and you want to get out to see something different, right? That's the whole idea. And you guys really have, as Roger Ebert's quote suggested, created like a culture. It's not necessarily just go see the movie, go home, turn around and go home.
Yeah.
Right?
That
you
Ebert-
mingle a little bit.
That Ebert quote was such a boon to us when we were, it was
Yeah.
our third year, and we got in touch with Roger and said, we've been doing this little film festival for a few years, and would you be willing to cover it? And he's like, well, send me some films to preview, and I'll see what I can do. We called every filmmaker we had accepted and said, here's Roger Ebert's address, send him your movie. He got inundated.
Oh, I'm sure. Everyone did, right?
Every filmmaker sent their tapes to him.
Yeah. You're an idiot if you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
And he wrote like a really long, it was like a 2-page spread in the Sun-Times about this little festival. And it was obvious he was up front. He was like, I didn't watch all these films in their entireties, but he previewed enough that he could talk about a lot of it.
Wow.
And the one person who didn't send him her tape was the filmmaker who we were showing opening night, a filmmaker named Sarah Jacobson, who was also a huge supporter of the festival at that time. A lot of our success, I have to give her a lot of credit for being like a
champion.
evangelist for the
Sure.
festival. Like she would go out to other festivals and be like, you've got to submit to Chicago Underground Film Festival. It's my favorite film festival in the country. She had a film in our first year, which was a short. This film that we opened our third year, it was her world premiere. She made this low-budget 16-millimeter feature in San Francisco called Mary Jane's Not a Virgin Anymore. It's about a teenage girl who works in an art house movie theater, losing her virginity and dealing with like the awkwardness of sex. It's like a teen comedy, punk rock style.
Sure.
Like, Jella Biafra was in it, and
Ryan has no idea who that is.
Dead Kennedys.
Oh,
I just wanted to call him out.
thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm enjoying the story, though.
Okay.
So Roger called Sarah up, and he's like, I'm covering the Chicago Underground Film Festival, and I need to write about the opening film. And she's like, well, it isn't finished yet. So I didn't want to send you, my movie because I'm still working on it.
Sure.
And he's like, I'm Roger Ebert. I've seen a rough cut before. And Sarah sent Roger a rough cut tape.
Wow.
He watched and he reviewed that in his piece pretty favorably. This would never happen today. This was 1996. Sarah's film had its world premiere opening night at the Chicago Underground Film Festival, and then the following January was accepted at Sundance.
Oh, wow.
Sundance would never accept a film that had its world premiere at another festival.
Right.
Like
Sure.
us now.
But Roger Ebert.
But Roger, yeah, she went to Sundance. She had like Allison Anders on her side. She had Roger Ebert.
That's
get
awesome.
in there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sadly, Sarah passed away. She had cancer and passed away in 2004. But I got to give her a shout out. We're actually, there is a grant for female filmmakers that was set up in her name.
That's awesome.
The Sarah Jacobson grant. And as a benefit for the grant, I don't have a date for this yet, but we're setting up a screening of this feature, Mary Jane's Not a Virgin Anymore, as well as some of Sarah's short films.
Awesome.
That we're going to be doing in Chicago sometime between now and next year's festival. I got a little sidetracked in talking to the grant people and scheduling that date. I'm going to get back.
When it comes out, let us know, and we'll spread the word.
For sure. Now, the 2018 Chicago Underground Film Festival is taking place June 6th through the 18th.
Yeah.
So
Way
Sixth
out.
through the
mark your
10th.
calendars.
6th through the 10th.
Oh, the 6th through the 10th. It's the 10th. Okay. So mark your calendars.
Yeah, please do.
Now,
Please.
we like to end all of our guest interviews with some silly cinema cues, we call them.
Okay.
Get to know the guest through the eye of the lens. Phil, do you got something for Bryan?
I do. I have one. So, Bryan, you and Jay started Cuff while you were working at a really great video store with a lot of cinephiles and a lot of people who are really knowledgeable. What kind of film fest do you think you would be running if you worked at a Blockbuster Video at the time? And what kind of videos do you think, or what kind of films do you think you'd be showing?
Well, I did work at a Blockbuster prior to working at the really cool video store. And I managed to like instill enough of my underground cinephile sensibility into a Lincoln Park Blockbuster for a couple of years, where I was actually given the they foolishly trusted me with the store's discretionary budget, so we get a little percentage of each month of how much, depending on how well the store was doing, to buy films. I bought some pretty crazy stuff for that Blockbuster that we're probably not. But Blockbusters at that time, video was new. They had some pretty cool movies because they just didn't know what they had.
They did. There's a famous rumor, I don't know if it's true, that Blockbuster's parent company was owned by Mormons in Utah, and they did edits on some of the films.
I don't think that's true.
It may not be,
that's
but
rumor.
This guy, Rye the movie guy, was a huge Blockbuster holdout into the. We were already doing this podcast.
Oh, yeah, I was still, because they had transitioned to Blockbuster Online, which was the same exact thing as Netflix at that time of mailing out the DVDs. It was just a better deal because I don't want to get into the whole argument, but you could actually get them in the mail, and then instead of mailing it back, you would actually take that to the store, and they would give you a movie right then. The next one would come. It was just a faster, better process, and somehow it failed. I don't know how. But
how did that happen?
I don't know if they were Mormons, but the people that did run Blockbuster were very concerned about being family friendly.
Let's say conservative.
Yeah. They definitely wanted to be family friendly. And there were certain movies that they wouldn't carry at all. A couple of those made it on the shelves at the video store, the Blockbuster I worked at, because
well done, sir.
I just put them in the computer and put them on the shelf and waited.
Good stuff.
Like Martin Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ. No other Blockbuster in the country that I'm aware of had it, but the store I worked at did.
Awesome. Love it. Now, for the jawheads listening to this that want to find out more about Cuff, Chicago Underground Film Festival, where's the best place to do so? Online and social media, all that good stuff, Bryan?
Well, the best place, probably our website is cuff.org. Getting back to our talking earlier, the early 90s and stuff. We had a website before the Chicago International Film Festival had it was a terrible website, but we had a website in 1996. And Chicago International got theirs a few years later. But cuff.org. We're on Facebook. If you just search on your Facebook for Chicago Underground Film Festival, find our Facebook page. We're on Instagram as Chicago Underground Film Fest, all one word. And Twitter, we are cuff_Chicago. I didn't set that up. I don't know why it's because the C in cuff stands for Chicago. So Chicago is kind of in there twice.
Sure.
But there is now a Calgary Underground Film Festival who also calls themselves Cuff.
Those
Come
fakers.
on. Yeah,
You know,
forget
I
it.
mean, no, if any listeners are in Calgary, someday I'll come to the Calgary Underground Film Festival and I'll start some shit.
Good stuff. So Bryan is sitting in on this entire Cinemajaw. He has his top 5 underground movies. I can't wait
Excited.
to talk about those films. But it does bring us to a segment called Eye for an Eye. Phil?
Yes, Eye for an Eye, Thor Ragnarok. Imprisoned, the mighty Thor finds himself in a lethal gladiatorial contest against the Hulk, his former ally. Thor must fight for survival and race against time to prevent the all-powerful Hela from destroying his home and the Asgardian civilization. The film stars Chris Hemsworth, Cate Blanchett, Tom Hiddleston, Jeff Goldblum, and Anthony Hopkins. It is directed by Taika Waititi, who previously directed What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People. We throw it over to Rye.
Matt, I very famously have been down on Marvel films. Bryan, for a while, I was trying to call attention to more independent films. I hate the idea that these Marvel films can be seen, at a box office of 200-some million people, and then there's such great quality films out there that aren't getting attention, and it bothers me, right? So I had this Marvel ban going for a little while, and it was irking Matt. But every once in a while, I jumped back in. All right, I have fun with these movies. Thor 2, I thought was a mess. And everything about this Thor Ragnarok, am I saying it right? Mm-hmm. I want to be hip, Matt.
Oh,
Ragnarok?
Yeah. You're very hip.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not an ancient
Hip
word
to
or
Norse,
anything.
hip to Norse mythology.
Yeah. Thor Ragnarok is, I am so excited about it. Cate Blanchett. In my top 5 actresses, top 5 people that I am attracted to go see all of their movies, those kind of people. I think the director, as we've saw What We Do in the Shadows, what an interesting choice to choose this guy to helm a Marvel film. It looks absolutely awesome. Very, very interested. Matt? Let's pull the curtain back.
Yeah, I saw it, okay? So that's how interested I am. I already saw it.
We are going to review it next week, so Matt's not going to say much more than that.
I'll hold it.
It was an early screening for Matt, but very
But listen,
interested.
even if I hadn't seen it, I would have been interested.
Bryan?
Oh, I'm definitely interested. I'm going to see it on Monday. I'm a longtime comic book reader. I read Marvel comics growing up as a kid. I don't read them regularly now, but I'm kind of compulsive. As much as I love like experimental, underground, offbeat films, I'm kind of compulsive of watching all the comic book movies and TV shows and things, just because I have such an affinity from my childhood with those characters and seeing how they're treated and what works and which ones don't.
Well, we won. That's the thing here. Like, we have a similar sensibility, and I'm also a comic book fan. And back in the day, these things were very underground and looked down upon by people like Rye the Movie Guy. But we have won. The geeks have ascended. The geeks have inherited the earth.
All right,
and now we've got the big budgets.
I will concede though that your point that
thank you. He's pointing to me for the jawheads.
He's overselling that.
No, let him compliment me here.
That those films dominate the box office today. I understand why that's a problem.
Right.
And like, believe me, my job is to try to get people interested in coming out to see films about subjects you don't know anything about, made by people you don't know anything about, starring people you've never heard of. That's Chicago Underground Film Festival.
Right.
That's my challenge.
Perfect. Phil, how do you feel about Thor?
We're going 4 for 4 here. I'm super excited about it for all the same reasons that you guys had said. Also, like, I can only describe it as like a vaporwave aesthetic. I don't think we've seen that in movies before. Like, it's been on the internet, but I don't know if it's been in movies, and I think that that's really cool.
Wait, what?
Vaporwave.
I mean, what is that? Are you talking about like the marketing?
like the color scheme.
Oh.
And like I don't know, like Google Vaporwave. Like anyone who's seen YouTube is like, Matt, what are you talking about?
Throw it in the jaw box. Give
I
us a
will-
description of Vaporwave.
I will look up Vaporwave, yes.
I like it. 4 for 4, though, for Thor. I know Matt is very excited because I come in and
Well, we've been talking about it for nearly a year.
yeah.
And
so-
I did actually just watch What We Do in the Shadows
Great,
for
right?
the first time
I love it.
like a week ago.
Yeah, that could have played at the Chicago
Yeah.
Underground.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about knowing that he
Yeah.
directed Thor, too.
Some of
Yeah.
that comedy comes through.
Nice.
Really does.
And the
And I agree that the second Thor movie was terrible.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the worst Marvel movies probably made.
It's got some problems.
Yeah, for sure. 4 interesteds for Thor. Speaking of new movies, me and Matt, we got out there and we caught Suburbicon, didn't we, Matt?
Oh, yes, we did. Suburbicon. Here is a perfect example of the sum not being equal to its parts. This movie looks great on paper. We have the Coen brothers script combined with a promising director in George Clooney, Matt Damon in the lead role, as well as Oscar Isaac and Julianne Moore in supporting roles. As far as film pedigrees go, it doesn't get much better than that.
Welcome to Suburbicon, a town of great wonder and excitement.
Hey there.
Built with the promise of prosperity for all.
Nikki, you need to get up. There are men in the house. Son, there's something I have to tell you. Those men killed your mom.
In the trailer, we're promised murder, mystery, suburbia, and comedy. However, what happens on screen is a total mess. To call this movie tonally wrong would be an insult to tone. I've seen better pitch in an American Idol bloopers reel. The story is about a man named Gardner Lodge, who along with his sister-in-law hatches a plot to murder his wife and make off with the insurance money. Everything seems to be going well until the heavies that Gardner hired to do the job notice his young son behind the two-way mirror in the police station lineup. Something must be done about this loose end, and wackiness ensues. All of this is set clumsily against the backdrop of new neighbors moving in next door to the Gardners in the quiet town of Suburbicon, and these neighbors happen to be black people. With the racial culture in America right now, I really feel at this point cannot be understated. I understand the Coens were writing this, and the director's intent by directing it was to make fun of stereotypes and fears. However, it came across completely wrong in my eyes and only enforced some of the negative stereotypes and hurt. It wasn't funny, it was played for laughs, and it just felt cheap and wrong. In fact, most of the jokes feel cheap and wrong. There's really nothing funny about the story. I think in another director's hands, if the Coens themselves had been at the helm, maybe this could have achieved that dark comedy tone they were going for. But again, it just did not come together. As long as I'm griping, I also have to mention the beginning. Have we not seen the silly pseudo-50s style advertisement to explain that you're in a Norman Rockwell-esque version of suburbia so many times? Why do movies still open like this? It wasn't necessary. If I had to try to find one highlight of this film, it would be the actor who plays the young son. I wouldn't exactly call him a standout, but among so many other flat performances, he was probably the only character I actually believed. Oscar Isaac's cameo is also probably the one highlight of the film, and I won't call it much more than a cameo because he's just in it for one scene. Lastly, I must say I did really enjoy the ending. They went for something dark, and I actually feel like they connected, and the ending wrapped it up pretty nicely. And it was quite satisfying, but you can't drag me through the mud for 2 hours, drop me off at the candy store, and hope that I'll forget about the ride. It just didn't get me there. All in all, Suburbicon is well written, poorly directed, and I'm not sure if Clooney's style is just advanced enough to get that subtle tone of the Coen brothers script right. I don't think we're going to be hearing about this one come Oscar time. In fact, I think it's safe to say skip it altogether. Rye, what did you think?
Wow, Matt, you really hit it on the head here because you mentioned tone probably 3, maybe 4 times in that review.
Yeah.
And I think that is clearly the biggest problem with this film, right? It's just off. The tone of the film is off. And I think making a black comedy, it's never easy. You really have to fine-tune a black comedy. But director, and I'm putting air quotes here, director George Clooney forgot the comedy altogether in the first 45 minutes. I mean, there is not a laugh. Would you agree? There's probably not even a chuckle in the first 45 minutes of the movie.
I wasn't timing it, but yeah, I didn't chuckle the whole film. There might have been like one or two.
It's insane. Matt Damon, way too serious as Garden Lodge, the main character. Julianne Moore, she has a dual role in this film.
Yeah, I guess.
Not that great either. I mean, she's a little too serious as well. Like, she's not playing it for laughs. The only person, and you mentioned this, that had the tone right was Oscar Isaac. And you say it's a cameo. He's actually in two main scenes in the movie,
I guess.
And he plays like the insurance investigator who's coming after just that, investigate the crime, the murder, and see if there should be an insurance claim. Once he comes on screen, the film felt like it had some life to it for a little while there. He definitely picks it up. Thank you, Oscar Isaac. I will say I enjoyed the final 30 minutes. I think you're sort of alluding to the ending of the film being enjoyable. I would say that the same, but not enough to recommend. I didn't draw that clear connection, actually, between this main storyline of the mob and the murder and everything with the family moving in and the uprising with the African-American family.
It's just a backdrop. Okay.
I mean, there's supposed to be a connection, right?
No.
Of some degree.
So
no?
What they're saying is in this small town of suburbia, white people can get away with murder because everybody's paying attention to the scandal that black people would dare to move into this white neighborhood. And that's what everyone's paying attention to in this town. And I guess I sort of understand where he was coming from or what he was trying to say, but it's ham-fisted and it really I mean, it's borderline offensive to me. I didn't like it.
Yeah, to me, it felt like Clooney's whole point was suburbs are bad. Isolating yourself from other cultures is bad. I sure hope he was going for more. I see what you're saying there. It just didn't come across. The message of the film as a whole does not come across. I did like the actor Glenn Flesher as the main mob character. Mm-hmm. That guy, almost cartoonish. And that's what they needed more of that. Again, you mentioned if the Coen brothers had directed this, it probably would have been a little bit more of a satire or a black comedy that would have worked. That actor was excellent, but really nobody else.
Both of the villain heavies, whatever you want to call them, the murderers, I thought they were both excellent, you know?
Yeah. And
kind of a Lenny and Squiggy thing going on.
And the story, obviously, we've sort of seen before, actually, from the Coens in another film that maybe I'll talk about when we get to Influences.
I think we will.
Yeah. So it just seemed not fresh, not funny, couple of laughs, and no standout performances for a film that when it was announced, and I think when we saw the trailer, we had such high hopes for. Sure. I know it was on maybe both of ours or one of ours.
It was my top anticipated film for the fall season, above Thor.
And it failed. Yeah.
Totally failed.
Yeah. But did you have a best scene? Did you have a scene that really worked for you?
Yeah. I really enjoyed the ending. I'm not spoiling anything to say it ends with a game of catch. I think that's an innocuous statement. And that was a really good place to end it. So I enjoyed the ending.
You did?
I really did. I loved the ending.
I thought it was, I don't know. It needed more of a message at the end.
Well, yeah, the whole film's broken,
it really did.
But I like the ending.
My favorite scene is Oscar Isaac coming in to investigate Julianne Moore. She's alone. He comes to the door and starts talking, and he's just a smooth insurance investigator. Yeah. And it's the first time that all of a sudden the plot of these murders and everything starts to crack, and you realize, like, oh, this is going to be sinister in a funny way. That whole entire scene with Oscar Isaac, and he says he's going to come back, that's the only time I was excited during the movie. Like, this is going to go somewhere, and still failed. Worst scene?
So, you know, I mentioned all the trouble I had with the racial stuff they were going for. There's one scene in particular where Mrs. Wilson, I believe the character's name is, goes to the grocery store, and she gets met with some pretty blatant racism and discrimination at the grocery store. And again, while I applaud the attempt at social commentary, it didn't work. It feels completely out of place in this film. And I was just like, what the hell are they doing here with this movie? And it fell flat on its face.
I didn't care for that scene either, and it was just too over the top, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I'm sure stuff like that absolutely happened. That's not the point. It didn't work. It was like forcing a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
It didn't fit into this film.
For me, I talk about forcing and not working is Matt Damon has this scene where he takes a dead body. He's in a car, and he wants to dispose of the car and the body, and he has his son's bike in the trunk of the car. And after he disposes of this, he has to use his son's bike, which is a little bike, and drive back to the house. And it was supposed to be funny. It's played for laughs, but it felt like it was forced. You know that feeling where it's just like, that just doesn't work. I mean,
Yeah, it was even in the trailer.
He's trying to look silly at being big Matt Damon on this little bike. And it's just, at that point, I think because the rest of the movie wasn't playing as well, I was just like rolling my eyes.
Ditto.
Influences?
Fargo.
Yes.
But not in a good way. It's like George Clooney was like, hey, guys, you got anything for me? And like, well, we got this old draft of Fargo. We totally rewrote it, but here, you can play with this one.
I have Fargo also. And then I said that the suburbs portrayed here reminded me a little bit of Edward Scissorhands.
Right. That 50s
yes,
pastel.
Everything's, idealistic, and it just
Norman
looks
Rockwell-esque.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I would say a mix between Fargo and the suburbs scenes of Edward Scissorhands.
Okay.
What'd you learn from this movie, Matt?
That being good on paper does not translate to the screen, always.
This is true. I had pulling off quirky characters is not Clooney's thing. I don't like it when he tries to be goofy on screen.
Well, he's great, no brother.
That's the only one, the one exception. But usually when he has anything that's not cool, suave George Clooney, I don't care for him. And I clearly don't like him when he's trying to direct goofy characters.
Yeah,
it didn't work here at all.
Sure didn't.
Yeah. Movie poster quote?
Suburbicon. The con is that you think this movie might be good.
Suburbicon is mediocre con.
I think I win this one.
Yeah, you got that one. Let's assign some jaws here, Matt.
I'm going one jaw.
Nice. Strong.
Yeah.
I like that you finally trashed a film, Matt.
I
Doesn't it
trash
feel
films?
Good? No, usually you trash a film like American Assassin, then you're like, 2.5 Jaws, go see it, guys.
You don't understand. I'm not going to get into it.
No, let's not argue. I went actually 2 Jaws.
Sometimes schlock movies can be good. This isn't a schlock movie. It's just a badly made comedy.
It is. And the reason I go 2 Jaws is the final 30 minutes worked for me. I came around on the film, but it was already, the damage was done. It just wasn't a good film. But the last 30 minutes I enjoyed,
Dragged through the mud and dropped off at the candy store.
Can I just interject something?
Absolutely.
Please do.
Listening to you two talk right now reminds me of Jay Blaznick and I at the video store in 1994.
Happy to be carrying the torch, carrying on the great tradition.
No, absolutely. I think obviously that's, the point of the podcast is to talk movies and argue and what we
And
like.
Jay and I are still great friends, and we argue about movies and things all the time.
I think the tough thing is me and Matt, not always. For instance, Matt went to a press screening of Thor earlier. I'm going to a later one. But sometimes we go see a movie like Suburbicon. We do sit next to each other, and then we come out of the theater. It's very difficult not to talk about the movie right then. And it's like, save it for the podcast, because I don't want to know Matt's thoughts, because I think the listeners enjoy the spontaneity of the review. But it is difficult as we're walking to the car to not start talking, and then we're standing in the parking lot discussing this or arguing over something. So it is. But it is. We can agree on this one, Matt.
Yeah.
A misfire on Suburbicon. I go 2 Jaws.
Well,
Matt
you've convinced
K,
me
1.
not to see it.
You're not missing anything, man.
Hopefully we save
promise.
somebody's money out there. Don't go see it. I rental at the absolute best.
Yeah, if you're a Coen completist, I suppose you have to, but you could safely wait for this one.
There you go. No underground scenes that I know of in Suburbicon.
They go in the basement.
True.
It's close. Close.
But that is our topic this week because we have Bryan on from the Chicago Underground Film Festival. We like to get things started with our guests, asking them, A, did you have fun coming up with the list? And was it a fun list to come up with?
Yeah, I did have fun. I struggled.
Difficult time, I should say.
I struggled a little bit, and I used a couple of different approaches, which makes sense.
Sure.
Because one of the things that I constantly say about the festival is that we try to look at all the different types of underground film
There you
when
go.
we program. So I tried to look at all the different ideas of what this could mean. My number 1 wasn't that hard. My number 5 wasn't that hard.
Filling
The
it.
stuff in between, I struggled with a little bit. And because underground filmmakers break the rules, I cheated.
There you go.
I like
well,
it.
Brian, you're getting us started this week. What do you have sitting at number 5?
At number 5, I took a more literal approach to underground. And also because Halloween is right around the corner, I went with a horror film.
Well done.
And I picked Neil Marshall's 2005 British horror film, The Descent.
Of
Good
course.
pick.
Absolutely.
I really liked that. I didn't see it in the theater. I caught up with it on Netflix.
Yeah.
But I thought it was like one of the more effective horror films. It has a lot of that kind of
It makes it onto a lot of lists.
alien
does.
kind of feel to it. You know,
I love
like
it.
Where Alien, they're trapped on a spaceship, and this is they're trapped. You know, they're trapped
in
in
a
the
cave.
caves. But
Yeah.
it's similar. Like it's like monster in a house kind of
In a
theme,
way.
you know.
And Matt
It's just the
mentioned
house is different.
spelunking,
Yeah,
right?
you did.
In the beginning.
And I love the fact that it was an all-woman cast.
I loved it also. 6 women basically go into a cave and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
I loved it. I agree. It's one of my favorite modern day horror films
I
for
agree.
sure. So great pick at number 5.
Yeah, no arguments.
Matt, you want to go first or me? You
No,
wanna
I'll go
finish
next.
it?
Yeah.
All right.
So I take us back to 1990 for the Fred Ward vehicle, Tremors.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is. I haven't seen that film in a long
Yeah.
time.
I say Fred Ward jokingly. I mean, if you're talking about Fred Ward movies, this has to be the top of the list.
I
But
love Fred Ward.
Kevin Bacon, obviously, and
Of course, Brian loves Fred Ward.
I love Fred Ward too, but I love
Look at
him
him
most
smiling over there.
in Tremors. Tremors is one. Speaking of the VHS era, that I think I
Absolutely.
owned it. If not, I rented it like every weekend. It definitely had a warm spot in my heart as like a horror movie that's got that monster sci-fi feel. It fits in so nice. There's a lot of comedy in it as well. There's some action. It's a fun, good movie, and all the terror takes place underground with these creatures.
Yeah, that's a good one. In fact, I don't know what number it was because they made numerous Tremors after that.
At least 2 others.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, I believe, made his big screen debut in one of the Tremors films.
No.
Throw it in the jaw box. Throw it in the jaw box.
I know which film you're thinking of. It's not Tremors.
Hey, that's why we have a jaw box, you
Okay.
jackass.
Okay.
Jesus, tough crowd. All right, swings it over to my number 5. This
right, what you
one
got?
came out in 2010, had Ryan Reynolds in it. You're thinking, what?
Deadpool?
Deadpool? Is that what you're thinking? No, Ryan Reynolds made a very interesting movie where it was one man on screen
Oh, yeah.
the entire film, and it also took place underground. I'm speaking of Buried.
Still have not seen
I
this.
haven't seen it.
No, so the idea here, the premise is, I mean, it literally opens up with Ryan Reynolds in a coffin, a wood coffin, underground, buried alive, and he wakes up, and he's basically 6 foot, maybe 3 feet underground, where he can
Sure,
still
we
hear
don't
the
know at
people.
this point,
Yeah,
yeah.
but he can hear the people above ground. And he was a contractor in Iraq, and these people have buried him alive, trying to get his company to pay a ransom before they take him up. No one else is in the movie. The entire film is shot with just Ryan Reynolds in the coffin. And they do some amazing work with the camera because you're watching a film that has a runtime maybe of an hour and a half. Throw that in the jaw box, Phil. Runtime of the movie Buried. But it's got to be an hour and a half of just Ryan
It's
Reynolds
a feature-length film, yeah.
just in a coffin.
I've not heard of this film before, and I'm really intrigued.
Yes.
Like, this sounds like something I want to watch.
He has a BlackBerry with him, so he's trying to communicate with the outside world, explaining what's going on, and
And a
very-
Zippo lighter, right? And the whole movie's lit with a Zippo.
yes, maybe not even the Zippo. Maybe he does have a Zippo. I can't remember if he has a lighter or if it's just the cell phone screen that he's using to sort of see around.
Sure.
But there's some really interesting extras on the DVD as well on how they made it look like he was in a coffin the entire time trying to get out. And it has a nice ending, too, like a twist to it. So, Buried, if you haven't seen it, I'll recommend
Putting it on
from
my
movie
list.
guy. There you go. What do you got sitting at 4, Brian?
All right, so number 4, I picked City of Lost Children. Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro from 1995.
Big fan of
French. Yeah. I love Delicatessen too, but City of Lost Children. The set design, the art direction of that film is beautiful.
So how do you tie this to Underground?
They're are they in underground tunnels in that film?
I guess they're, subterranean, yeah.
Yeah. Ron Perlman's performance is great. I love Ron Perlman in almost anything.
Sure.
I heard he's going to be playing Tom Waits.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, isn't that kind of cool? But that was my number 2.
And that was your number 4.
That was my number 4. Yeah.
I have not seen it, so.
You've never seen City of Lost Children?
No.
Dude.
Put that one on my list, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right back at you, Brian. Now I got something down that I'm going to check out.
I haven't watched it in a long time, so now I'm second guessing myself. It is underground, isn't it?
They go into the steam tunnels and stuff. And it's been a
Yeah.
long time for me, too. I mean, geez, at least 10, maybe 15 years since I've seen it. Long time. But it's a good one. All right, so at number 4, I have something from 1984. The Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers,
Chud.
better known as Chud.
Nice.
I knew somebody
Underground is right in the title.
Somebody is going to have Chud on their list.
Before we had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we had the Chuds. I mean, they're deep pop culture reference, but the Simpsons have referenced them. This is a classic VHS era rental. Great schlocky sci-fi 80s flick. If you haven't seen Chud, you really should.
It's funny. Right before this, I was at a cocktail party that they had for Michael Shannon, of all people, which was awesome. But as I was there having a drink, I was talking to Clint, fellow critic.
From Alcohol Hollywood, sure.
And
I just assumed you meant Eastwood.
No, he actually said to me, how's Cinemajaw going? I said, we're recording tonight. And he asked what the topic was. And when I told him the topic, underground movies, he said, do you have Chud? And then he paused and he said, that's actually a Matt K pick.
Really? This actually happened?
It did.
Wow.
Isn't that awesome?
That is.
Sweet. Nice pick at number 4, Matt.
Thank you.
If it didn't come up, I would have been disappointed with you.
Thank you.
My number 4 is an animated film. Stop motion animated film. Came out in 2014. You have to see it for the animation alone. Takes place largely underground. I'm speaking of The Box Trolls.
Oh, another film I haven't seen.
Still haven't caught up with it.
Oh,
Parker was afraid to see it for some reason.
Why?
I don't
The animation's beautiful. Just to give you a description here, the box trolls are like this peaceful, creatures that emerge from underground at night to scavenge
Junk and garbage.
Yeah, exactly. And they make useful inventions with them, right down in their lair where they live. And I mean, again, you're talking about set design. This is animation, but it looks spectacular. And they have a human boy named Eggs lives there, and Eggs is getting older, and he becomes dismayed with the disappearing box trolls because there's an exterminator trying to get to the box trolls. See it for the animation alone. It's by the studio that gave us Coraline.
Nightmare?
No. Coraline.
I like Coraline a lot.
Phil, help me out here.
and,
Princess Bride?
No, you're thinking of
Kubo
Corpse
and the
Bride.
Two Strings.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Paranorman.
And Paranorman, that's what it is.
And
yeah.
fun fact, Leica was the animation, they were responsible for animating Corpse Bride and Nightmare.
Right.
However, they weren't
their own studio.
Yeah.
And now it
was,
is.
I forget who it was. It was owned by someone else before Phil Knight, who's the owner of Nike's son, began running it.
Yeah. But they're one of those studios that is sort of like Pixar when it was starting.
They have
you
this
should
thing.
really see their films.
Well, Kubo was amazing.
It was, and so is the Box Trolls. So, especially if you're an animation fan, it's a must. That was my number 4. We're into our 3s. What do you got there?
Okay,
Brian?
this is where I start to deviate from the rules a little bit.
Punk rock he is.
Oh, you got it. That was good.
Yeah.
Punk rock. So number 3, I started thinking about underground music, and I picked Penelope Spheeris's Decline of Western Civilization, her punk rock
I like this
documentary.
guy a lot.
Look at how happy Matt is over there.
It's a great movie.
It's not just the 5 PBRs.
You're the first person other than me to ever mention this film on the podcast.
I mean, I love.
still haven't seen it.
I love the whole Decline trilogy. She's made 3. She's been a guest at the Chicago Underground Film Festival.
The Metal Years, what was the third one?
The third one, Decline of Western Civilization Part 3, is out on Blu-ray now. You can actually get a box set with all three.
Was it new?
No, it's from... We actually showed it at the Chicago Underground Film Festival.
That's cool.
When it came out, it took a long time for her to get a DVD or Blu-ray release for it, and it just came out on Blu-ray a couple of years ago. But it's about L.A. gutter punks. And when she came to the festival to show it, she was with her boyfriend who she met making that film. He's like 20 years younger than her and was like an L.A. gutter punk guy that she met, and they're still together. She's actually, another reason I thought this would be a good film to mention tonight, because I love Penelope's films. She's somebody who's made very mainstream films like Wayne's World and The Beverly Hillbillies. The less said about that, the better. She needs to pay the rent, too. But she made these Decline films, and she's going to be a guest next month at SimFest.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, the people at SimFest are friends of mine. I help out with their festival a little bit. And I saw they're bringing Penelope back. I was like, well, I'm going to give her a shout out tonight.
Nice.
And mention this. I mean, I'm a 80s hardcore kid, you know, Black Flag and those band X.
Huh?
These were like, you know.
Yeah.
Very,
You're
very,
speaking my language.
very,
sir.
very close to me.
I'm missing everything here, man, aren't I?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Well, you need to see The Decline of Western Civilization
I do.
by Penelope Spheres and see the whole trilogy.
I should.
But that was my nod to underground music. And I love music documentaries. I love underground music. And I love Penelope.
Nice. Pick at 3. Matt, can you follow that up, buddy?
Well, I also have a documentary at number 3.
Really quick, I also have a documentary at number 3.
Wow, this is great. So
That's the spot.
But I did keep this one literally underground. Ryan, I know I've talked about this one before on CinemaJaw, but if you're talking underground movies, this one is it'll blow your mind. It's called Dark Days. Have you heard of this?
I love Dark Days.
Oh,
yeah.
dude.
I wish I thought of that.
Why don't you guys just start dating?
I know.
You know what
I
I mean?
actually, I saw the premiere of Dark Days at the Sundance Film Festival when I was out there in like 2000. I went to one of the first screenings of it. I love that movie.
The movie is amazing. For anybody who hasn't heard me rave about this before on the podcast, it's probably been a couple of months.
I actually feel like I missed the boat by not putting that on my list, but you did. So
I got you covered. It takes place in an abandoned subway track in New York City, and it's about this sort of tribe of homeless people that have set up a shanty town underground. This is a documentary. This filmmaker got incredible access to these people. They allowed him into their makeshift homes that they've constructed out of corrugated metal and scraps, essentially. They show him how they do simple things like go to the bathroom and gather food and set up electricity and things like this. And it's just so amazing to get a glimpse into this sort of, there's almost a sort of a hope to it. They've created this new society, but this is the stuff out of pages of comic books, right? There's no real people living underground in the sewers, but yes, there is. And here's a documentary about it. Fascinating. Wow. Fascinating. And it's shot in black and white.
Yeah. And a great soundtrack by DJ Spooky, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last time you brought this up, it wasn't all that long ago.
Hasn't been that long.
No. I actually went home that night and I looked it up.
Did you see it yet?
Throw that in the jaw box. Is it streaming anywhere? I want to say I looked it up. You know how these new devices, I have a Roku, whatever you have.
Sure.
They're different devices. On the Roku, you can actually just search and it'll tell you where it is streaming. I'm pretty sure it wasn't streaming anywhere when I looked. So
this is worth a rental. Like if you got to pay $2.99 or whatever to see this, do it.
Nice pick. As I mentioned, I have a documentary at number 3. How strange that we would all have 3 documentaries. My film, I do feel that no other filmmaker could have possibly made this movie. So that is always like a bonus. It's like if this guy didn't make it, the film just couldn't have ever existed. I believe this is his only 3D film as it was billed. I'm speaking of Werner Herzog's 2010 Cave of Forgotten Dreams.
I knew somebody was going to pick that one.
This is a great pick, Ryan.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. This is the story that is this cave in southern France, which contains, and I mean, this is just so fascinating to think about. This cave in southern France contains the oldest human-painted images ever recorded that we have discovered.
And only Werner Herzog could make that as fascinating as he does.
It is spectacular.
Does Werner
literally.
Herzog not make everything fascinating?
The best.
Yeah.
Literally the best.
He does.
He does. And I remember, I mean, I don't go to the theater a ton to see documentaries. This one was billed in 3D, and I love that it was because it made me go out, I remember, to the theater to see this and was not at all disappointed. I mean, it's just fascinating. I think because Herzog is such a storyteller, and he's looking at these images in the caves and talking about they represent the idea of mankind to be storytellers. In some way, they're depicting a story on these cave walls. And there's just something about Herzog telling the story that is so moving if you're a fan of movies and art and learning about something like that. That is just, it's breathtaking. I loved Cave of Forgotten Dreams. So, yeah.
It's a good pick, dude.
That is my number 3. Here we are. We're into our 2s,
Okay.
Brian.
All right, so again, punk rock guy breaking the rules.
You got to break him.
So my number 2, I struggled with for a while, and eventually I just made a note, and I wrote down like a few different underground filmmakers that I really love, and I'm just going to give them all a mention here. Kenneth Anger, Scorpio Rising, is what it was one of the first underground films that I ever saw when Kenneth was at the School of the Art Institute at the old film center before it was the Gene Siskel
Sure.
Film Center, when it was part of the museum building. In the 80s when I was in college, and I went to see him show all his films there, and it kind of blew my mind, and I was like, these are, I've not seen anything like this, and these were really, it was really exciting the way he uses music, and the imagery in his films, the surrealism, the occult imagery, and the biker stuff in Scorpio Rising, and I love that. I wrote down Jack Smith's Flaming Creatures, and we showed this at the festival in 1997, restored print. Jack was a New York underground filmmaker. John Waters has quoted saying, Jack Smith is the only really underground filmmaker. Jack always lived in poverty his entire life. He made these bizarre movies in his house or his apartment in New York where he would replicate like Baghdad, like he'd just paint his apartment and then invite his friends over. Scorpio Rising takes place on a rooftop in New York, and it's kind of a weird like polysexual transgendered orgy shot on black and white 16 millimeter. It's a weird, cool movie, and it's very much of the 1960s underground. It's kind of a film that defines that, and it was he was busted for screening this film. That's how underground it was.
Wow.
Like it was like illegal to show this movie.
That's underground.
Yeah. So I felt like he needed a shout out, and then the other two I mentioned in my notes here were two filmmakers. So when we were talking about the history of the festival,
Is this a 4-way tie here?
it's a 4-way tie.
Hey, you're
4-way
breaking the
tie
rules.
for 2.
Only because he's the guest, we're letting him have this,
Yeah,
Matt. Just so
I
you know.
told
You
you.
can't do this, Matt. I'm not allowing it.
Breaking the rules. The next two I wanted to mention were two big influences on Jay and I when we started the festival. There was a movement of filmmakers in the Lower East Side of New York in the 80s called the Cinema of Transgression. These were punk rock underground filmmakers making movies with mostly Super 8 on the Lower East Side of New York and screening them in rock clubs before bands played and things. Richard Kern and Nick Zedd were the two.
Yes, dude. Richard Kern, for sure.
Sure. They were like the two main people in this movement.
Wait, that's all the stuff with like Lydia Lunch and
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Oh my God, dude, this is a whole subset of cinema that Rye has no idea even exists.
Completely over my head. It's like I'm
that
underground here. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
underground
I was
and it's
really-
all happening above me.
Listen. I gotta just go into this for a quick second. There was this store in Danbury, Connecticut.
Oh,
I'm
here
from
he
the
goes
East
with
Coast.
his Connecticut shit.
It's called Trash American Style, and they,
My kind of place.
they
already.
had these films. Okay, so the drummer in my band at the time, I can't even say his stage name because it was that offensive.
Love him already.
Yeah. So he introduced me to all these Richard Kern films with Lydia Lunch, and oh my God, like I was into horror and like, you know, the zombie films like George Romero and stuff like that. And when he showed me these films, and this was in the mid 90s, I'd say like between 95 and 97. Holy crap.
Yeah. So Richard Kern was a guest of ours at the very first festival we did.
That's really hardcore stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And it was pretty exciting. We brought him, and a few years later we had Nick Zed, who was the one who coined the phrase cinema
Zed's
transgression.
dead. Oh, I thought Zed's
Well,
dead.
actually,
Yeah.
Tarantino was referencing Nick Zed in that joke
thought-
in
I
Pulp
thought I
Fiction.
heard something about that.
Yeah. Because Film Threat magazine, again, had championed a lot of these films, which is where one of the places where I heard about them originally. Nick is a difficult person, to be kind.
Like Matt, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit more difficult than Matt.
Is there a Okay, go ahead.
And eventually, Film Threat kind of got like tired of giving Nick, like they were just annoyed with him and were like, we're tired of giving him free. They published a fake obituary, full page in their magazine that Nick Zed had died. And for years, people thought he had actually died, and he had a hard time screening his films because people were like, you're not Nick Zed, you're dead. So Quentin Tarantino, he said Zed's dead, that was an inside film geek joke about Nick Zed.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
Is there a fourth before we move over to Matt?
Well, I had four.
Oh,
there
okay,
was
there's
four.
more four. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right, good. I mean, when he's rattling
I just
off.
wanted to rattle off my.
I mean, look at how happy Matt is. I mean,
my
you
underground
guys got to go out and have
influences.
beers and hang out.
Ryan's always like, you don't know anything about film. I'm like, I don't know anything about the crappy films you like.
Oh, that is harsh.
I've been into underground. There's stuff I haven't even talked about.
You
Talk
and the
about trauma
underground.
and stuff. He has no idea what it is. He's like, you mispronouncing trauma? It's terrible.
All right, Matt, what do you
I'm
got
gonna
sitting at
take that
number
thing
2,
and
buddy?
Smash it. All right, this honestly, guys, after that is gonna fall completely flat. But it's a favorite of mine. It's another '80s pick. In fact, we're still in 1984. It takes place largely underground, very mainstream movie.
Can I say it for you?
Sure.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yes. You draw that coming, right?
Yeah,
Well done.
honorable mention of mine.
Largely underground. I mean, here we have the mine cars switching tracks and the whole thing with the whip over the, like, this really is the one that cemented Indiana Jones in my imagination.
Definitely the best.
I agree.
I don't know if I could. I don't know. It's arguable, right? I mean, the first one's pretty fantastic as well. But me and Matt have talked about this. There are some people that don't like Temple of Doom. I think it's when we grew up. I was a big Temple of Doom fan. And, I mean, the whole temple that they're at is all underground.
Yes.
So that whole entire scene with the ripping out of the heart and everything is underground. And I always liked all the set designs, that everything that was going on, it was very believable that he would come across this culture and this guy that had children enslaved down underground. It was creepy. I liked it.
Plus the snake surprise.
Nice pick at number 2. Mine is a film, foreign film that I've spoken about a couple of times on CinemaJaw. This is came to us from Poland, came out in 2011. The film is called In Darkness. And this tells the story of Leopold Sosha, I believe I'm saying his name right, who was a sewer worker in a Polish city during World War II.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I've talked about this on CinemaJaw before, and this is where he used, and this is based on a true story, he used his knowledge of the sewer system in the city to shelter and hide Jews from the Nazis who were getting ready to take them to the ghetto. And the whole film is down below in the sewers. And I think the other thing that I mean, getting a little technical here on is just when you're making a movie such as this, where it's in the sewer system, lighting, all the stuff that is
you take for granted.
You take for granted. I mean, it's so difficult to pull off a film that's supposed to be quote unquote in darkness, and you're actually viewing the film. So on a technical level, it's great. The story is phenomenal. I've seen so many movies, obviously, about the Holocaust or, trying to, hide from the Nazis, so on and so forth. And sometimes it doesn't play as intense maybe as the filmmakers build it up to be. This one completely works. And it was a story that was completely fresh to me. So
nice pick.
All of that picked. My number 2, In Darkness. Here we are, Matt.
Okay.
It's Cinemajaw, and this is our number 1 film that takes place underground. Brian, you're leading us off, buddy.
All right. Again, so I started my list with The Descent, which literally takes place underground. And then I moved into increasingly more experimental and less literal interpretations. And I'm going to end with something that is both the most experimental film on my list and the most literally underground on my list as well. And it's not a specific film, but it's a series of films made by a Boston experimental filmmaker named Luther Price, who literally buries films in his garden and leaves them underground for months and then digs them up and screens them. And I love this guy's work. We did a tribute to him 2 years ago at the festival where we did a...
You buried him underground for 2 months before bringing him to the festival?
We showed 2 of his early, not these buried films, we showed 2 of his films at the festival, and then at Mana Contemporary Art in Pilsen, we organized a exhibition of... He also does altered slide work with 35mm slides, and we did an exhibition of his slide work presented there. But he literally buries films in the ground, lets the emulsion get eaten away by the dirt and the worms and things, and digs them up. He doesn't do... They're all originals, so every time that they're screened, more emulsion flakes off, and... some projectionists are
film to
16mm or Super
exactly.
8.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
A good friend of mine, Adam Parody, who I had drinks with last night, is from Boston and knows Luther. And a couple of years ago when we were planning all this, I was at Adam's house, and he was like, "Oh, you want to see something Luther gave me?" And he opened a drawer up, and he pulled out a film reel about 3 inches in diameter that Luther had left underground a little too long, and it was just like a solid mass.
It had just
congealed. With like fungus growing on it. Like he left that one in the ground too long.
Talk about experimental. That's as far as it gets.
Yeah, so it's very, very literally underground. I love Luther's work. He's amazing. The imagination this guy has. To even think to do that and to feel like, and I really want to see his work preserved. And like Anthology Film Archives in New York has started a preservation program.
Isn't that almost an oxymoron, though, to see his work preserved?
It kind of is, but you know, people need to know about this stuff.
I agree. Just pointing out. Great pick, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the most underground thing I could think of. And it was one of the first, The Descent, my number 5 pick, and Luther Price were the first 2 things I thought of. Nice. And it took me a while to figure out what to put in between to get from point A to point B. But
Matt, what do you got sitting at?
I like it. Listen, I don't know if it's as good as that pick, but I think when you're talking about underground as a setting, it doesn't get more iconic. It's been remade. I'm not talking about the remake. The 1959 classic Jules Verne story, Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan. It's really cheesy to watch it today. And last time I saw it, I might have been 9 years old. So it's been a long, long time. But Pat Boone's in it. You know, not that I like Pat Boone's stuff today, but back in the day, he was, you know, a pop star. And it's funny to see him at the time. It's a trip, dude. It's literally a trip.
Literally a trip.
Have you ever seen this? Be honest.
I have not.
You've
no.
never seen Journey to the Center of the Earth?
I have not.
Classic.
I've seen it. I love it. And 9 years old is a great age to see it.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I mean,
Although I would watch it tonight. I would watch it today.
Yeah.
We could watch it right now. I'd be like totally down for that.
exactly. Jules Verne, anything by that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this is an adaptation, but it's good.
Sure. Who was in the remake? I want to say it was Brendan Fraser. Was it? Yeah, I'm getting a nod from Phil over there, so I was right.
I'm gonna.
I didn't
say
see that one either. So.
That I'm not the biggest Pat Boone fan.
Yeah, neither am I.
But
it's
okay,
funny.
I'm gonna give Pat Boone a little higher marks than Brendan Fraser.
As far as acting goes,
I did
anyway.
dance with my mother to Pat Boone's cover of Ozzy Osbourne's "Crazy Train" at my wedding.
There you go.
Nice.
There you go.
Swings it over to my number one. I hate ending it when someone's already called my number one, and it happened right away when Brian mentioned my number one pick, 2005's The Descent.
Okay. Well.
I think what it is too. A lot
Way
of
to
times,
end it on a downer.
Yeah, a lot of times is I'm not the biggest horror fan, so. For me to really appreciate a horror film, it
really means something.
Well, I go sort of gaga over when I see a really good one. Like I love The Orphanage, which I've brought up on the show.
It's a good one.
There's certain ones that I really gravitate to, and I'm like, wow, that is what I'm talking about. Is a great horror film. And for me, The Descent falls into that category. I think it's always horror probably comes up with stuff that you are probably afraid of, and going into a cave, such as the women in this film go into, no way. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, scary. So I'm if there were no creatures in the cave trying to kill these 6 women, I would have already been scared of just their adventure of going into this cave and exploring it. Really creepy. So I don't know. I love The Descent. So that is my number one. If I had one other honorable mention that wasn't mentioned, all of them have been, is DreamWorks animated film Ants. With Woody Allen, right?
Well, I got a way better honorable mention.
All right, what do you got?
Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. You shall not pass. I mean, doesn't totally take place underground, but they're in, what is it, Minas Tirith for a very long time. The king under the mountain. That whole scene, which is an extended sequence, more so than a scene.
It's awesome.
Oh,
There's no doubt, for sure. Also, The Ruins.
Never
the
seen
horror
it.
film?
No.
I remember I saw it, and I don't know. It's an honorable.
Well, I don't get an honorable mention because I already cheated enough.
Yeah, you had 4 at number 2.
All right. If we missed your favorite movie that takes place underground, maybe The Core with Hilary Swank. I hope not. But if there's one out there that you guys think we missed, shoot us a tweet at CinemaJaw or write us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. What we're going to do is take a quick break. When we come back, interview with John Carpenter, Matt. How awesome is that?
Very awesome.
Yes, plus trivia. Brian versus Matt in Thor movie trivia. We'll be right back on CinemaJaw.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Hey, Jawheads, this is Matt Kay, and I just wanted to let you know, if you're a fan of CinemaJaw, if you're a Jawhead, why not become a patron on Patreon? It's super easy. Go to patreon.com/CinemaJaw. It's just like Kickstarter. There's different levels you can pledge, fit your own budget. And you get cool rewards like t-shirts, CinemaJaw flasks, and fun stuff like that. Plus, our undying gratitude and love. So again, check it out. It's patreon.com/CinemaJaw. There's some cool stuff there, and we hope you will do it.
Also, Jawheads, if you can't become a Patreon, but you still want to help the show, there are other ways you can do that. One of those is leaving us a review on iTunes. All those reviews do help attract new listeners, and that's what we want, more listeners. So please go to iTunes, leave us a review, and we thank you.
To get ourselves a treat.
And we are back on CinemaJaw, hanging out with Bryan Wendorf of the Chicago Underground Film Festival. He is about to take Matt on in trivia, Thor movie trivia. Before we get there, though, we did throw a few items into the jaw box. Phil?
What's your pleasure, Mr. Cotton?
The box.
What's in the box?
Yeah, absolutely. How's it going, Jawheads? Glad to be filling in for Elias today. We did have...
filling in. You hear how he says it?
Yeah,
yes,
like filled in like
PFIL,
underground.
filling in. I meant to do that too. Thanks, Ryan. We had a couple questions in the jaw box today. The first one, what is vaporwave? So buckle up because this one's kind of like a weird thing, but vaporwave is a micro genre of electronic music and an internet meme that emerged in the early 2010s. The music typically features a fascination with 1980s and 1990s styles of mood music, such as smooth jazz, elevator music, R&B, and lounge music, often sampling or manipulating tracks via chopped and screwed techniques and other effects. And then this is how it ties into Thor Ragnarok. It also incorporates early internet imagery, late 1990s web design, glitch art, and cyberpunk tropes in its cover artwork and music videos.
Still don't know how that ties into Thor,
No,
but I'm
telling you.
That's
like-
the image. He's saying the imagery of
Yeah.
Thor captures that.
I
Correct?
guess because they went for that 8-bit video game aesthetic. Is that it?
No, I mean, yes, but no, right? Like it's because it's more than going for the 8-bit video game aesthetic. That would be like Scott Pilgrim. It's like,
Well, I meant in the graphics.
yeah, no, seriously though, but like because it's like us doing it now. You know,
Sure.
like what 8-bit would look like. I don't know how to explain it. I
I'm
promise
gonna
you guys.
take your word for this one,
You
Phil.
just explained it in the definition.
I just know that when I go on Monday to see it, I'm going to be thinking about vaporwave the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a good way to do it. Anytime that you've seen like a YouTube video or like a tweet that's like a word where all the letters are all caps and then there's that really big space in between each letter, that's vaporwave.
Okay.
I'm going to be vaping in the boys' room.
Speaking of vaping,
I'm pretty familiar with vaporwave as like in terms of like as a musical
Yeah.
style, but I don't really know the aesthetic around that, which is probably what I need
this
to know
vape is.
Yeah.
to really understand
Yeah, and so
how
it's
it
like-
ties to Thor.
And like, yeah, just
Wow.
like if you
What
look
a
at like
vape.
any St.
guys
Pepsi
doing
music
bong
video.
All right, I like it. What else we got in there, Phil?
So the next one, did Leonardo DiCaprio star in one of the Tremors films? And no, he was not in any of them. What I did find, which I think might be what you were going for, is that he was in Critters 3.
Critters. That was the movie.
Come on,
Critters.
you knew that.
No, I really didn't. I thought he was in Tremors. I mean,
Botched that.
come on. They're synonymous.
They are not.
What else you got?
Next up, we have the runtime of the movie Buried with Ryan Reynolds, and that is an hour and 25 minutes. So you were close, just about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and that's one man on screen in a coffin for an hour and 25 minutes, and they made it damn interesting. So,
Hey, I believe it. Ryan Reynolds got talent.
anything else?
And this one is the last one, a very important one. Is Dark Days streaming anywhere? And the answer is yes. It is on Amazon Prime, if you have that for free, as well as Sundance Now, which I didn't even know was a thing. But if you're subscribed to that, you can also see this film.
Do it. Do
Yeah.
it. Check this one out. It's wild.
I guess I lied on that one. I did look it up. I remember. Maybe I had the wrong title or something, but awesome. I'm going to check it out for sure.
You really need to.
Nice. Before we close that jaw box, we did get some feedback, Matt.
Yeah, we did. Flicker Joe, who writes to us from time to time.
Oh, we love Flicker Joe.
We do. He wrote in, he said, great episode this week, guys. Great CinemaWAR. And Rye, a brief word on your rant about Assbag Weinstein, because I had a brief dilemma about this and I wanted to share. Great movies are a part of our lifeblood, and I've always followed Miramax and the Weinstein Company closely because their films are so often exceptional. All that changed when this news broke. But there are still dozens of great movies, some of the best ever made, with Weinstein's name now discoloring the credits. How then do we reconcile these films when it turns out they were made by the worst kind of human being there is? The only solution I could come up with is to continue focusing on the true talent of all the others who created the films, veering the camera entirely away from his involvement. He may have hired them all, But those men and women were the ones who did the work. Do not let the industry and the art of Peter Jackson or Tarantino or Scorsese or countless other visionaries and their crews take the fall because a deranged mogul may have had some deep pockets but never actually wielded the paintbrush. Blotch out Harvey Weinstein, the producer. Never forget Harvey Weinstein, the predator.
How well said was that?
Very well said.
It is very well said. I'm still struggling with this one myself.
I
in all
am
honesty.
too, and that's why I asked you to read that.
Can I give my little 2 cents about
Please.
the Weinstein thing? My big concern about what's going on with the Weinstein situation right now is that, like, he got kicked out of the Motion Picture Academy, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. But my fear is that the Academy is looking at it like, we're going to demonize Harvey Weinstein. All the problems are all Harvey Weinstein, and not a systemic culture around Hollywood that has a problem. And I think it's bigger than Harvey Weinstein. I think that his behavior is this is not out of the ordinary.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we all focus all of our hatred and attention on Harvey Weinstein and how bad he is, then everything else goes back to normal and it's business as usual, and all the other studio execs can continue doing all the shit that they do.
Right.
Yeah. All the other casting couches.
Yeah. No, that's a great concern for sure. And well said. I mean, I don't know. Can we throw a late Jawbox question in there, Phil? Is that allowed? I don't know if has there ever been somebody kicked out of the Academy of? I don't think
Roman Polanski's still in the Academy.
I don't think this is
Woody Allen. I mean, you can.
It's like a precedent that he's been kicked out of the Academy of Motion Arts and Pictures. I to my knowledge, it's the first time it's ever happened.
Did they kick James Toback out yet?
I don't think so.
Because that's a big one.
Yeah. Glad we bring it up, and we're still discussing other feedback. We talked about Harvey Weinstein on the last episode, in which we did films based on urban legends, and one that we heard from via Twitter at In the Black Lodge, who is Alex Starsky on Twitter. He was really hoping that we would have Candyman for urban legend films. And after he listened to the episode, he chimed in, said, "Oh man, not even an honorable mention? You guys really let me down on this one. Candyman's entire theme is about the power of urban legend." I'll say this, Alex. I did see Candyman way back in the day, and I have not revisited it enough.
It's a Chicago movie, too.
I know. Yeah. Hey, do you remember this one?
You should. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's up there in one of my favorite horror films. Great Chicago film.
Yeah.
And a great, in weird way, like a great document of what Cabrini Green was.
Yeah.
Which isn't there anymore.
Right. It's a Target now.
It's got a lot. Yeah.
I get my paper towels there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the better Clive Barker films, too.
And that's saying something. It really is.
Yeah.
I think that was all we have. Now, Phil's, I think he's waving at me. He might have an answer to the Jawbox question.
So what I had found, and this is interesting, it's the second time that someone has been kicked out of the Motion Picture Academy. What I can't find is who the first person was, because they're like reputable place. Like where I'm reading this from now is from NPR, but I don't see who the first person was. But I know it's not fully unprecedented, but it's still like
extremely rare.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of all the
80-something years,
weird, crazy stuff that has happened with people who are making films and are in the, the Academy.
Oh yeah.
That this is something that got him, kicked out. It's rare. So, good point though, Bryan. Let's keep awareness on this, and we will pursue. Right? We're movie fans.
Yeah. So keep it clean.
Thanks for Flicker Joe. Thanks for Alex. We love the feedback. Was that everything in the Jawbox?
That absolutely was.
Get back underground.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Matt, every once in a while we have a lot of fun on Cinemajaw. Some privileges, right?
Yes.
This was all you. I was shocked to hear that you had a chance to speak to John Carpenter.
It was a real pleasure.
And were you nervous at all? A little bit? What do you got?
Honestly, okay, so no, I wasn't nervous because I did my research, and everything I saw of him online, he just seemed like a very nice, down-to-earth person, and that proved to be true in my conversation. So definitely honored, and I had a shit-eating grin ear to ear the entire time. Maybe a little intimidated because, I mean, he's a master filmmaker. And a big thanks to Riot Fest for setting this one up. Just read it on the Riot Fest website, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But without further ado, guys, here is my interview with John Carpenter.
Hello.
Hi, this is Matt Kabinski calling for John Carpenter.
Hi there. This is John.
Hi, John. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you very much for granting the interview. I'm excited.
Oh, absolutely. No problem. I love it.
All right, well, let's jump right in.
Okay, let's go.
Well, I want to begin by talking about your music. Many people may not know that you did the score for most of your films, but I think even less know that at one point, perhaps before filmmaking, you wanted to be a rock star. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I don't know that that's absolutely true. I mean, a rock star. I never thought of myself as going that direction. What happened was back in Kentucky when I was growing up. When I got older, I was in a band, and it was a cover band, and we played like fraternity parties essentially. So we liked to watch the fraternity members get really drunk while we played. It was fun. I mean, it was great. We got a little bit of money.
What was the name of the band?
I'm sorry?
What was the name of your band?
We called ourselves Kaleidoscope at the time. At some point, I had to decide, well, am I just going to stay here in Kentucky? Or am I going to go out and at least try what I've always wanted to do, which is movies? So that was the choice, and I decided to come to USC in Los Angeles and study motion pictures. But I never thought of myself as a rock star, ever.
So I heard in a documentary I was watching about you that doing the score for a film was like a vacation after the stress of all the on-set filmmaking. I wonder if it was also an avenue for you to express yourself musically to a wider audience, or was that just a nice byproduct?
Well, that was true. I mean, I expressed myself also as a director, in the sense that I got another layer of creativity on top of directing a movie. I got to add music, which was great. And it added just another, I don't know, dimension, I suppose, to the directing experience. So I'm happy I did it.
How did the music enhance the directing? Just curious.
Well, it enhanced the storytelling, so that a director visually tells a movie story. And the composer also tells a story musically and enhances the thematic materials that the director is working with, enhances the narrative, and that just deepens everything.
That's interesting. Kind of leads to my next question I wanted to ask you about the Lost Themes albums. So the title sort of suggests that sometimes it's the other way around as far as where the stories and the music, the chicken and the egg. So I wanted to ask, have any story ideas ever come from the music?
No, the music is it's all extremely practical. It's simply, the movie needs a score, and I'm there to do it.
Sure.
So it isn't that movies have, visual ideas have erupted, so to speak, from music, but not my own.
When writing music specifically for film, I'm curious, what's your process? Are you sitting at a piano, a computer? Does it start while humming in your car?
Well, all of those things. Depends on when you mean. It's been all of those things in various times. So, let's see. It depends on what era of filmmaking we're discussing.
Well, I mean, obviously, I've heard you tell the story about how the iconic theme for Halloween came together in like an hour. But if you took a theme like, let's say, the one from They Live, which is a little bit more rock blues influenced, how did that one come together?
Well, that came together right on the spot as I'm watching the footage. In other words, after 1981, I got to score to the image, which I didn't in my early films. So that was actually excellent because I could watch what the scene was about and score to it. So They Live, that came about because, and the main titles came about at least because here comes the main character walking into Los Angeles, and it's kind of a bluesy feel to the music at that point. It's a little, I don't know, it's a little Grapes of Wrath-ish.
Sure.
That he's a working poor guy who comes in and trying to find a job. So it went with a kind of blues feel. That was, but simply came out of doing the score, sitting in front of a screen and starting the recorder.
So I've heard you say in a bunch of interviews that your father was a huge musical influence on you. But if I put you on the spot, what are your top 5 rock albums in terms of influence on you musically?
Oh, wow. Well, Help would be one. I'm trying to think of what Rolling Stones album has been influenced.
Give Me Shelter?
Yeah. What album is that on?
Oof, I don't know.
Yeah, see, well, there you go. But whatever that album is, Give Me Shelter has always been influential. The Doors.
Nice.
Soft Parade, and that album has been influential. So there have been several.
That's really cool. So getting to your records, Lost Themes has sort of this saturated 80s synth and drums mixed with sort of a modern industrial and even trance and electronica sound. Do you ever consider genre when you compose, or do you just write what feels good?
God, I have no idea what you're describing. I'm so stupid. I have no idea what you just said. As a matter of fact, no, I don't think about any of that. I just think about making music. I don't know what industrial. I don't know what all that is. I just don't know.
That's amazing because you've been so influential. I mean, some of your themes, like I hear that out in pop culture. It's funny to hear that you never really consider that.
No, I don't think about that. I don't think about any of that. I just make some music.
So speaking of music, can you tell us about the new album, Anthology?
Well, Anthology is a kind of some of John's best hits throughout his movie career. So it's music from the 1970s through the end of the 1990s. And it's just a trip down memory lane. We've re-recorded these things, utilizing the new technology that I have my hands on to make it sound better than it did when we started back in the old days. So it's great. It was great to revisit some of these old themes, and actually I've done some music from other composers, Jack Nietzsche and Starman, Ennio Morricone and the Thing. We've re-recorded those too, so they're on the album. So it's kind of a revisiting John Carpenter's movie music legacy.
The greatest hits.
Kind of, yeah, kind of.
So speaking of other composers, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross just this past Friday the 13th did a cover of the Halloween theme. What did you think?
That's right. I liked it. I thought it was great. They're very, very talented guys, you know. So the fact that they'd even give this a shot is excellent. I thought it was really good.
Nice. Sort of a feather in the cap, I guess?
Well, yes. Terrific.
All right, I want to turn a bit toward the filmmaking. So with little exception, you've stayed within the horror and sci-fi and action genres. Have you ever had the urge to create in another genre?
Well, I wanted to make Westerns way back when, but the Western died. So it wasn't a staple anymore of movies. It was something that, you know, only a big star could get made.
Sure.
Like Eastwood or Wayne. So, I mean, you know, it wasn't around for me. I really wanted to make Westerns.
Well, I suppose you sort of did. I mean, Vampires is an obvious, you know, but even They Live has a bit of a Western feel to it. A lot of your films do.
Yeah, that's true, but, you know, an out-and-out, a real Western. And never made one.
Oh.
So, anyway, that's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good considering the films you've made. In so many films, especially in horror, just come and go, but yours have stood the test of time. They get better with age. They get re-released in theaters. So what do you suppose it is about your style that makes the work so timeless?
I don't know. Always tried when I've made a movie to, I call it aim for the horizon. You don't make a movie for right now. You make a movie for years from now, or for forever from now. A movie that'll hold up. It doesn't always work, but because of styles and things that seem phony to us that were really fresh and new back in the old days. But that's what you try. You try aiming for the horizon.
I mean, you say it doesn't always work, but you've had such a great track record. Can you give me a specific example of how you aimed for the horizon in any one of the films?
Well, in Halloween, for instance, there weren't a lot of, I don't think there were, a lot of pop culture references. There wasn't a lot of plotting. Mm-hmm. What I aimed for was mood, and that seemed to have worked out.
So speaking of Halloween, you're born in New York, moved to Kentucky, now you live in L.A. So in Halloween, why Illinois?
What I wanted to do was set it in the small town in your mind. And it's not a real small town that anybody knows, but a small town that we imagine. So that's why it's Illinois. Haddonfield, Illinois, it doesn't exist.
I want to ask about another question about They Live, because it happens to be my personal favorite of your filmography.
Oh, great. Sure.
That iconic fight scene. I mean, it's probably just one of the best. Did you know as you were filming it that nothing like that had ever been captured before?
Well, I had a feeling we were going to do a fight scene that was extremely long, and that really haven't quite ever seen. But for obvious reasons, because a wrestler was starring in the movie. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know that it was unlike anything ever done. But I knew it was going to be different. And I'm really proud of this scene.
Yeah, it's amazing to this day when you think of a down and dirty street fight. I don't think it's ever been topped.
Not like that, and it's but it's not a fight with weapons.
Sure.
Exactly. It's not a fight with a gunfight. It's not a knife fight. These are two friends fighting in an alley, and one of them is trying to get the other one to look through a pair of glasses.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. It's a different kind of fight. And the guys, Roddy and Keith, really, I mean, they really worked it. It took them over a month to plan the fight out.
Over a month of planning. Wow. How long did it take you guys to shoot it?
3-4 days. But Roddy and Keith and the coordinator, Jeff Amata, worked for a month plus on the fight.
Sure, I can imagine Roddy sort of brought that sensibility from wrestling. Was it a challenge more so for Keith?
Oh, sure. They just worked it out. They were making contact, which was great. Unlike a stuntman fight, your two actors are actually making contact with each other. So,
wow,
it was great.
That must have been so cool. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall on the set those days.
Yeah. I'm very proud of it.
Good, as you should be. So I'm sure you've been asked a million times what scares you, so I want to rephrase it slightly. What scares you most today?
Well, I've thought a lot about that, and I think I'm scared of the same things that you are. Everybody's scared of the same things. Every human is scared of death. We know we're going to die. It's a frightening thing, the unknown. But we're scared of disfigurement or fire or, pain. Everything it's common throughout the earth. We're all afraid of the same things, which makes horror a universal genre because it works everywhere.
We all, at our core, have the same human condition, I guess.
That's it. We're all born. Some stranger slaps us on the ass. It scares the shit out of us.
Yeah.
We're born that way.
So now that your greatest hits, so to speak, album is out of the way, what's next for you musically? Will you continue to write and to tour?
I don't know. Not thinking that far ahead. I'm just thinking day to day. But I'm sure I'd love to do some more music.
Well,
we'll probably do something.
I really hope you do. I'm hoping to get out to see this tour, and I wanted to ask if you'd ever considered playing some festivals.
Sure.
Yeah?
You got any in mind?
I might have one in mind.
Okay. Well, we played in Barcelona, the Primavera Festival last year. And that was fun. Oh, man. That was a blast. So we love to play festivals.
That's awesome. Well, I hope to catch you at one. I can't speak with you, Mr. Carpenter, and not ask about the new Halloween film.
Yeah.
What is the status of that, and what's your involvement?
I'm an executive producer. I've been involved in all the major decisions. I'm not the director. I'm not the producer. I'm an executive producer because I'm kind of the legacy producer. I've been around. I think I'm going to do the music. It looks like I will. And we have a good script. We have a great director. Jamie Lee's coming back. And it'll be fun. Hopefully we'll make a good movie.
I'm sure, man. I'm very excited for it. Any parting words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Words of wisdom, yeah. Keep living every day. It's all great.
Well, thank you. Thanks, John Carpenter. This was a real treat, man. I appreciate your time immensely.
It's been a lot of fun, man. You take care.
Wow, Matt, you didn't screw this one up.
Oh, thanks, Ryan.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
So now can we say John Carpenter's been on Cinemajaw?
Yes.
I love it. That's pretty cool.
We can literally say that, yeah.
Love it. All right. This is fun, man. All right. Before we get to trivia here, Matt, I did want to bring a point up to Bryan. Bryan, you are also a proud member of IFP Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a big birthday party coming up on November 4th.
November 4th. Yeah, I'll be DJing at that party.
Oh, nice.
What?
See, I got to go to this one. I got a feeling you're going to spin some good tunes.
I was actually about to go, and now I might be canceling plans.
Oh.
I'm joking.
It'll be myself and Mikkel Bortz, who from Bortz Law Firm, and the party manager, special events manager for the Chicago Underground Film Festival will be co-DJing.
Okay.
So, we'll be playing, and I've promised I won't be playing any heavy metal.
Some punk, though.
So there's some punk in the playlist. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that is taking place on November 4th. So if you hear this, you got a couple days to react and maybe come out to, what is the name of the venue? Noisy Floor?
Noise Floor.
Noise Floor. Okay.
I don't remember exactly where Noise Floor is.
Well, we can put a link.
You can go to the IFP Chicago website or Facebook page and find out.
Yeah. And again, for the jawheads listening to this that want to check out the Chicago Underground Film Festival, best place to do so online, Bryan?
CUFF.org.
Do it, jawheads.
Yeah, please do. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Boy, we are excited, especially Matt, for Thor Ragnarok. So we are playing Thor Ragnarok cast movie trivia.
Okay.
All right. Big cast. Works like this, Bryan. You're our guest. You get to choose if you want to go first or let Matt go first. There are steals, and if you get hung up on any question, you get one trip to the ER, or in this case, Fill Me in Phil. He's got clues to all the questions.
Okay.
They start off easy.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Why not?
Question number 1
Start
over
point.
to Bryan. What Thor cast member also starred in Carol, Blue Jasmine, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button?
Ooh. I think, is that Kate Blanchett?
1-0, Bryan.
I would have got that wrong.
Question 2 over to Matt K. Matt, what was the name of Chris Hemsworth's Formula One race car movie he made with Ron Howard in 2013?
Oh, I would.
So there were 2 movies that came out this year with the word Rush in the title. And it was Premium Rush and then just Rush. And one of them is correct and the other is incorrect. I really think this one was Premium Rush.
That is incorrect. You got a chance for a steal, and he may have gave you the right answer.
Well, if my two options were Premium Rush or Rush, I guess I'll go with Rush.
Wow. Bryan has cracked his
Damn
one
it.
wide open.
Damn it.
Look at him over there, grinning ear to ear.
Oh,
It is
man. I
2
screwed
to
that one
nothing,
up.
Bryan. Question 3 is over to you. Bryan, what was the name of the Tom Hiddleston, Jessica Chastain movie that was directed by Guillermo del Toro?
I feel like I should know this, but I'm at a blank.
Need an answer?
Yeah, sorry.
Incorrect. It did
Yeah.
not play at the Chicago Underground Film Festival. So, Matt, you got a chance for a steal here.
I feel like it was at the Chicago International Film Festival when it came out. But
Ooh.
when it came out.
Dude, I don't know. Guillermo del Toro, Devil's Backbone?
Oh, that's, I think, what I was thinking of. So I would have got that wrong.
We were looking for Crimson Peak. Crimson
Oh,
Peak.
yeah.
There you go. Still 2 to nothing, Bryan. Question 4 now is to Matt K. Matt, Jeff Goldblum, who plays the Grand Master, starred in 1986's The Fly. Who directed that film?
Cronenberg. David Cronenberg.
2 to 1. We got a ball game here. Bryan, question 5 is over to you. Mark Ruffalo has appeared in one film that has won the Best Picture Oscar. Name it.
Ruffalo won. Oh, he didn't win an Oscar,
Right.
but he was in the film.
He was in the film that won Best Picture. You do have a Fill Me In Phil.
Yeah, I'm going to go to use my Fill Me In Phil.
Oh, my goodness.
Because I don't really know Ruffalo's career very
All right.
well.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo, Best Picture winner, Phil. What was the name of that movie?
Your clue, Bryan, is this. When you're on a stage solo, you may have one of these on you.
Well, that's not a good clue at all.
That's a terrible clue.
Yeah, damn.
Bailey. Fail.
Anything. What would you have on you if you were on the stage all alone? Anything.
I don't know. I mean, hopefully I'd have a microphone, but I don't know.
Matt, you got a chance to tie it up here.
That is the worst clue. If anything, it just kind of threw me off more. Okay,
Yeah.
so what's the original question?
The question is this. Mark Ruffalo has appeared in one film that's won Best Picture Oscar. Name it.
It was, it is very recently. Spotlight.
Very good.
Now, does the clue make sense?
It
No,
does.
it's a terrible clue.
No, it makes sense.
Jesus.
It's still a terrible clue, but it makes sense.
All right.
I don't write these for the record.
All right. Man, tough crowd. All right, it's 2-2, all tied up here. Question 6 over to Matt K. Matt, Anthony Hopkins was in the 2010 remake of The Wolfman, in which he tries to bring back his son to life and turns him into the Wolfman. Who played his son and starred in the movie The Wolfman?
Benicio del Toro. I love me the Wolfman,
There
dude.
you go.
And
There you go.
Universal
I don't know.
Monsters, come on.
3-2.
You
Matt
knew
K.
that one.
I didn't know that one. I like my knowledge of Wolfman movies is like 1930s.
The originals,
Yeah.
sure.
Like
The Del Toro or the recent Wolfman movie, it's good.
okay, I'll check it out.
3-2, Matt K. Question 7 over to Bryan. Bryan, Tom Hiddleston, who plays Loki, portrayed Hank Williams in the 2016 film that obviously just came out last year. Name the movie. That is a tough one.
Hank Williams?
Hank Williams.
Oh, wait, what was that called?
The country star?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on, it's coming to him.
It's, was it Lost Highway? No. It wasn't Lost Highway. That's the Lynch film.
Yeah.
Wait. I'm thinking of Hank Williams songs, like something Heart. What's the Hank Williams? I love Hank Williams, and I'm at a blank. I'm sorry. It's the PBR you've been feeding me.
That's our strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
Matt's strategy.
That's how we win. Sorry.
Man, Matt, do you know this one? You probably don't.
So it is Walk the Line 2.
No, that's Johnny Cash.
This is part 2.
I do.
The Hank Williams story.
I do love Hank Williams.
When I say it, you'll probably it'll hit you.
Yeah.
I Saw the Light.
Oh yeah.
I Saw the Light.
I haven't
Isn't that Ace of Base?
I have not seen the film.
No.
I think I
That's
still
I
have the
saw the
screener at
sign.
home, but I have not seen the
I haven't seen it either, and if I had seen it, I would probably remember the name of the movie.
Here it is.
It usually works that way.
It is. It's 3-2, Matt K, and the last question is over to him. You can win it here,
Okay.
or give Brian a chance to tie it up. Matt, Chris Hemsworth teamed back up with Ron Howard for this 2015 film. It's an ocean story that inspired Moby Dick. Name the movie. Chris Hemsworth teamed back up with Ron Howard for this 2015 film.
It was a dud.
It told this ocean story that was the inspiration for Moby Dick.
Yeah,
in the movie.
I remember the way over the top trailer.
You do have a lifeline if you need it.
Oh, that's true. I feel like I almost want to give the sporting chance. All right, fill me in, Phil.
Whoa! Question number 8, Phil.
Not like these clues are any help.
Well, okay, so if it makes you feel better, Matt, this one is from my brain, because in the message Ryan sent me, it looks like he copy and pasted a little bit off. So hopefully this will be a little bit more valuable. I don't know. I'm sorry, Brian, if it is. Your clue is...
There's no money riding on this, right?
No.
If salt water had blood, it would have to go through here.
What?
I don't even know what that means.
Phil,
it makes perfect sense to me.
that is a joke.
What?
If salt water had blood, it would have to go through here.
It's got to be the worst clue ever given on Cinemajaw.
But weirdly poetic.
And so underground.
I feel like it's more on the nose.
What was Rye's original clue?
I don't know. It's, if I had it, I would give it to you.
Oh, all right. I don't know. Blood in the water.
Incorrect. Brian, you got a chance for a steal here and then tie it up.
You know, the frustrating thing about this is I was back in my hometown like 2 weeks ago, and my uncle was talking to me about this movie, about Herman Melville writing Moby Dick and basing it on a true story, and it was filmed and directed by Ron Howard. And I cannot, for the life of me, remember what that movie was called.
Did that clue do anything for you?
Not a thing. Not a thing. I am dead in the water. But I had a conversation about it, and it's like, oh, I hadn't heard about that film.
Yeah. Your mind was into the conversation. Your heart wasn't. We were looking
I'm not the biggest Ron Howard fan. But.
In the Heart of the Sea.
Oh. There you go.
That's what we were looking for. Matt, you win this one. 3-2. Can we get a handshake here? I mean... Yeah. I know you guys are going to be dating here, but you guys might as well start here and shake hands. The jawbreaker here, if it came down to a tie, would have been...
Can we just say what excellent fashion sense this man has? When he walked in, I was like, this guy knows how to dress.
All right, listen. Let me finish this, and then we'll talk about his dress.
Finish up.
If it came down to a jawbreaker, it would have went here to you, Matt. Chris Hemsworth, good actor or just lucky because he looks like Thor?
He's better than I think he gets credit for.
Because he looks like Thor, I agree.
I think it's about even.
Equal, yeah.
It's even. Like there's like he's not a bad actor, and he looks like Thor. Let's cast him as Thor.
Real jawbreaker was this: age of Benicio del Toro, closest to. Brian, you got a guess?
I'm guessing Del Toro's in his 50s. I'm gonna. Maybe he's in his 40s. I'm gonna say 51.
Lock him in at 51. Phil, you got a guess, Matt?
Okay. I definitely think he's in his 50s.
Okay.
I would say 55. I'll put him at the speed
Wow,
limit.
Matt, you jackass. He is 50. 5-0. We give that one to Brian.
Whew.
Yeah, well done.
Man, he's been making films a long time.
He has.
Since he was a young man.
Unbelievable. Wow.
So can we talk about the fashion sense here?
Really quick, yeah, as we wrap it up. So Brian comes walking in.
And this guy, it's like looking in a mirror. I mean, I got to just say it
Whoa,
here.
whoa, whoa.
I feel like I was staring. I was staring when he walks in.
That's an insult to Brian. The whole thing.
Black T-shirt,
like
faded.
like a
I
mirror.
usually wear the black hoodie as well. Leather jacket, jeans, combat boots, yes?
Doc Martens.
Yeah, that counts. This guy's got great style.
So Brian walks in.
It's a simple style. Anyone can do this.
And we're waiting.
And it's
few do.
And it's very affordable.
It is.
Well, yeah, that's because you don't.
And it doesn't take you a lot of time to get dressed in the morning because you're like, which black, like if your biggest decision of the day is which black T-shirt do I wear?
It's affordable because you don't get a new jacket for 30 years. Man, let's be honest here. How long have you had your leather jacket? Just ballpark.
I'm sure you've had yours longer, but go ahead.
I can't remember exactly. I know that it was sometime in the late 80s that I got my jacket. Little secret about my jacket. Stolen. Not by me. But I bought a jacket from somebody that I knew in the late 80s. And then after I bought it, I found out that I mentioned this bar, Lounge Axe, that you guys hadn't heard of before.
Empty bottle.
Yeah, before the Empty Bottle. He stole it off a bar stool at Lounge X and then sold the jacket to me. And I didn't know this until after. And then once I bought it, I was like, I can't like find the guy he stole this jacket from and give it back to him. I've already paid. I guess it's mine, but I felt so. I've been wearing something that somebody else has stolen for like over 30 years.
How long look around?
I think that
Matt,
makes it yours.
You do have a story about your jacket like that, other than it reeks like cigarettes and crack.
Leather.
It definitely smells like
and
cigarettes.
shame.
No, although I will say, I'm pretty sure that we have the exact same style jacket, and there are some variances in this motorcycle leather jacket style, and we both took the stupid lacing out of our whatever you call these things.
First
on the
thing
side.
I did.
Same. I hated those.
Well, if I left that lacing in, the guy who he stole the jacket from would see me wearing it.
And yeah, it doesn't look good. It's like tassel work or something. I never liked it.
One cool thing is like, anyways, Brian comes in. He's got this jacket on. Matt obviously sees this and is, oh my God, I have a jacket just like that. So Matt's like, I got to go get it. It's sitting in the car. He runs out, gets his jacket, then comes back in. We'll take a photo of you two.
Yes, we're gonna do this.
We'll do a group
as
photo.
we do each week.
We'll do a group photo, but we'll also just do you two with your jackets on, and
I wish I had my
we'll post
hoodie.
that on Instagram because it is quite funny. But the whole time I just kept thinking, I could never pull off that look. It is funny how there's certain things I couldn't just wear.
You could wear no.
I could.
Yeah, give yourself some credit, dude. You can wear a leather jacket.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just need to,
Could Phil turn around? Look at Phil. Could Phil wear a leather jacket?
I'm not taking off the Monsters Inc. hat.
Then probably not.
Well, yeah, that it's got to be one or the other, Phil.
There are some things that are non-negotiable in this world.
Oh, man. We have a lot of fun on Cinemajaw. I hate when they come to an end, especially when we have a good guest like this.
It was a lot of fun.
It's a total blast. First and foremost, we got to thank our sponsors.
Thanks to all the sponsors and the Chicago Podcast Co-op who help us get those sponsors.
Yeah, we also want to thank our guest, Brian, finally coming on Cinemajaw. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great being here.
We also got to thank the man in the fish tank today, Fill Me In Phil.
Not a problem. Thank you guys so much.
If you like what you hear, as we say all the time, Matt, leave us a review on iTunes. Really, it really does help. And keep that feedback coming. We love hearing from the Jawheads.
Absolutely.
Feedback at CinemaJaw.com. Until next week, I'm Ryan Bluey.
I'm Matt Kay, and keep on John about the movies.